Welcome everyone to the podcast, the Decoding Data Science podcast, wherein we get guest speakers who have expert in this field to share their thoughts. And I thought that Michael, he's one of the old community members, and he has been a speaker in many of our panels. And I wanted him to speak. We always talk, we always resonate with our process. He also has 20 plus years of experience. As of now, he's working as a CTO in Falcons.ai. You can see the banner behind him as well. And first of all, I'd like to welcome Michael to this podcast, and I will maybe ask him to give a quick introduction, and then we'll be moving to the discussion for the day. Over to you, Michael. How are things?
They're really good. Thank you again for having us. Always appreciative of the decoding data science community and everything that you're doing and facilitating, not just in Dubai but globally. So, pleasure to be a part of that. Yes, as you stated, I am Mike Stattelman. I am the CTO CEO of Falcons AI, founder. We have our number one model on Hugging Face, or the number one most downloaded model on Hugging Face. I think currently we're at over 150 million downloads for the last 30 days. So, that's been really good. And a lot of credit is due to the community, decoding data science.
Thanks a lot, Michael. First of all, congratulations to reach that amazing 150 million mark. I think this is one of the biggest achievements from this region as well. So, Michael, nowadays we are hearing, I'm going to a lot of conferences, and there is a lot of buzz about agentic AI, AI agents, and a lot of people are talking about this terminology. So, you have been in the industry for 20 plus years. So, what are your thoughts about this? Is this something like completely revolutionary, or how can people and companies approach towards this buzzword that is happening right now?
Right. So I think if you go back, and you're old enough to understand this, like myself. So, I think there's a lot of hype, right? And so if you look on, social media, LinkedIn, you have all these experts and agentic frameworks and agentic experts and things like that, right? So I think you have to kind of take time to avoid what we call intellectual junk food, right? So it's a lot of empty calories, nothing really substantial there. There are places, like decoding data science that you can go to get, proper direction and instruction with regards to, what the capabilities and need for these agents are. Getting back to the age thing, I think you're old enough, just like I am. I think AI agents are in their current form, and it's the very beginning. I think they're advanced bots, right? They're bots with some tool use capabilities, some I don't want to say reasoning, but some emergent decision properties, facilitated by the LLMs. So it's kind of for me, it's kind of a wait and see approach. Not wait, don't do anything, but before we kind of go, all in on, agents or the agentic framework, kind of, managing the risk and rewards of those. I think what's most important for, students, for learners, for developers and engineers is to absolutely understand the enormous power that these algorithms, these data driven, and I want to continue to go back to emergence, because a lot of times that kind of gets missed out. These are complex, not complicated solutions, so they do have emergent properties. Sometimes exact repeatable is not available or is not an option. So take into account of that, but to understand that when you start leveraging, technologies like this on your local machine, on, enterprise data sets, things like that, is to be very aware of the potential for disaster, right? Because I think to understand development and to understand, data science as in its true form, you need to understand the foundations of what's driving these models, right? And a lot of times people say, oh, use this framework, deploy these agents with this specific model, and the tool use capabilities, all of this. What is it? The computer use functionality, things like that. But you have to understand. So these things have been authorized, or these entities or solutions have been authorized by you, the user, to manipulate things, settings, applications on your local system. So you have to be very, very acutely aware of the level of control that you give them to be able to, not just use or edit data, but actually delete or remove files and things like that. So that's kind of one of the things that I would, encourage learners to definitely understand is what are the adverse effects from not absolutely understanding what you're doing that these types of solutions can have.
Yeah, and taking one step back, and I wanted to know your thoughts. A lot of people don't understand the difference between AI automation, AI agents, then again now we have something called agentic AI. I wanted to, from your point, because there are everyone is using these terms interchangeably, but
Yes.
do you feel that when we say just AI agents, this is a little bit different from agentic AI, or it is the same umbrella, and it's just the complexity of usage, and these terminologies are just coming up for business use cases?
So I do feel like there's a commingling of the terms, and it's kind of hard to get around, and that's why I spoke to the intellectual junk food being thrown around. So for us, an agent is a specific standalone entity that can interact with other tools or other agents to accomplish a specific task. Then when you start getting into agentic frameworks, to me, that specifies a clear line of separation, right? So it's like, to use an analogy, I say like a player is an agent, a team is a collection of agents working together, doing different things to accomplish a task, right? So you have an agent, you have agentic systems or multi-agent systems being a collection of agents, right, to accomplish this. And then a framework, take it one step higher. A framework is basically the orchestration through workflows of agentic systems, which are made up of individual agents,
Mm.
right? So that's how we kind
Hmm.
of have those distinct lines of separation.
Yes, this is a great analogy, like a team, like a football team, and you individual who knows all the skills. He is like an agent. He can
Yes,
he can take out his skills according to the condition that he is faced, and the whole team working together, the strategy,
correct.
that is a good. And then when they are working together towards one goal, that is to win the match, to score the goal,
Right,
or to defense, depending upon the situation.
right,
That's a very good analogy that can explain to people, the beginners, what is the difference because both of them cannot, they have to exist together, right? The
correct.
individual has to be good, and the team has to work together. Your
Right, because you have a breakdown, right? So if you have one agent that's really good at this one specific task, and you have five other agents that are, not so good at their individual tasks, right? It's so you have what we call regression to the mean, right? You're familiar with that. So that's one of the things that, when you start, building these multi-agent systems is your collection or your team or your agents are only going to be as good as the lowest performing member, right? Because that's the weakest link in the chain, right? And so your entire system will regress to the mean. Now, if you raise that mean, then they will ascend to the mean as well. That's a possibility. But depending on which models you're using, what your token limit is, all of that stuff comes into play. So you have to understand specifically, what is this agent doing? What do I need it for? Does it need to be able to do deep research? Does it need to be reasoning? Does it need to be good in math or physics or specialized tasks, things like that? and then you put them together. So that's kind of, yeah.
Yes. And one thing I wanted to also take your thoughts, and this is what I am also facing. Like a lot of companies, they want to implement agentic AI and improve their applications. It can be chatbot or any generative AI. But end of the day, when we look into their whole tech stack, the way they are processing the data, it's all old traditional methods. They don't have a proper data cataloging, and then whatever new systems that you will introduce, still it is going to go back to their inherent data, which is not at all cataloged properly, and you will not get an output properly because the data have
Absolutely.
duplicate values. They have, like, example, one example is like I was working for an HR chatbot, a very simple use case. They had two policies in the drive, the old one and the new one together, and they were giving confusing answers because they were not
Yes.
sure which one to refer to. So this is all going back to basic, right? Make sure your data is cataloged, keep only the latest files. If for any use cases, you need to go back and do a proper system architect, data design architect before you even uh, explore these agentic AI and all these wonderful.
100%. 100%. So me and you have spoken at length about this. So I feel like this continues and continues to get lost in the narrative, right? So you can have a Ferrari engine, which would be your agentic framework, your, LLM, whatever model or, architecture you want to fit around it. It's only going to be as good as the gas that you put in, right? And so that's your data. Now, would you rather have, a, a Nissan engine that runs very well because the data is very well structured, very well thought out, very well put together, very well organized, balanced, all of that? Or would you have this, massive, monstrous, high end racing engine with poor quality gas that you don't even know if it's going to start half the time? It's going to, the cylinders are going to knock, things like that, right? And so we can't get away from that. And no matter how dynamic and adaptable and advanced these LLMs or these models that run the power these agents are, it's only going to be good as the data that it's fed. Period. That's just there's that's an inescapable construct of our domain, right? And that's not in current today, that's not sexy, that's not super flashy. Nobody really likes to talk about the importance of the data and how to clean it and process it and balance it and everything. Like that's not, nobody wants to hear about that. Everybody just wants to, oh, look at this new flashy shiny new agentic thing or new LLM or new reasoning model or all of this stuff. But they continue to jump past the critical importance of the actual data that is driving these training decisions or these inference decisions, that the data that was trained on, right?
And again, going back to the discussion that, and what I tell, and you maybe you are also seeing this trend that a lot of people want to use AI and the new forms of AI, but again, it goes back to how well they have invested in their first layer of the stage one of the data governance. Because if they don't have anything, very simple example, right? If a person in a company is using Excel and this SharePoint to store his information, they can never go ahead in the digital transformation. The first thing is they need to digitalize their data, right? They need
Yes. Yes.
to put the and then any CRM or ERP, it can be any. Then only they can start taking advantage of this boom. So. What is your message to like small startups or businesses who want to adapt to these solutions? What should they do?
So I always start with three words: source of truth, right? So to your HR example, they had two different policies. Which one was the source of truth,
Yes.
right? It's like, so when we're children, our parents are pretty cut and dry. Hey, do this, don't do this, don't do that. Well, if you can imagine, and I feel like this is still the stage that we're in AI. We're still at the adolescent, preteen stage with these models. But if you're giving it two different, you know, mutually exclusive options, how is it going to know, right? Is it A or is it B? You gave me both. What? So, you know, and I always point to, that's fine. We can move forward as long as you have a clear cut source of truth. What is the true source? What is the actual data that you want to use? And what is identifiable as that is a fact with regards to our organization? That is a fact, right? A lot of organizations, you know, you pointed this out, a lot of organizations are run off Excel spreadsheets, which is, you know, to this day, I think it's crazy, but you know, Microsoft would be the most valuable company on the planet, and there would be no one close if they charge per Excel sheet.
Yeah. So now coming to this, right? As we always discuss and offline that if any company who wants to use AI, first they need to invest in their infrastructure, which is not, it's not, it's expensive because you need to.
Yes,
And how can we? How what is your message to these people that they need to budget about these things as well? Because without end of the day it's all about how you are valuing your data, how you are cataloging it, and for that you need to have some infrastructure, some automation in the for your data engineering pipelines, as you were mentioning, source of truth, and you should have that, and it takes time. You cannot do it matter of weeks. You need to,
correct.
yeah. So what are your thoughts on this?
So, you know, I kind of go along the lines of speaking with leadership, you know, pull your phone out of your pocket. Right. This is, I kind of personalize it. Pull your phone out of your pocket. You know, for the most part, they have a, you know, most recent phone, a S24, or the latest, you know, iPhone or whatever.
Mm.
And so I always frame it as, so you don't want to spend, you know, X amount of dollars for your, you know, data governance, your, you know, data alignment, the whole digitization process. You don't want to spend for the architecture, for the infrastructure, right?
Yes.
But for your business or your organization. But you have no problem spending that amount on your own person, right? You understand personally the value that this provides. I can see that by the device that you have in your pocket. So explain to me how your personal device should be of higher value, of higher performance than that which runs this enterprise, right? So you can't say that you're not comfortable spending that money. You've done it personally. What you're saying, though, without saying it, is I value this on my person, but I don't value this for my organization. Now that's up to, you know, that leadership to kind of, you know, make those decisions and realize, yes, this makes sense because this organization pays the money so I can buy this phone, right? Or so I can have these devices. So, you know, it's kind of that's just how I frame it, right? To kind of make it personal, so you understand you value this by the device that you have in your pocket. You prove to yourself that you value this technology. Why then don't you apply that same to your organization, right?
Yes. So, Michael, what I am seeing, talking to a lot of people, going to a lot of events, there are two developments happening at a different tangent. One is the enterprise level, which is very careful. They are still figuring out what they need to do, the traditional banks, and
Yes,
they are playing around with a little bit of generative AI and doing some use cases. But at the core, they're still taking some time, and as you know, it will take some more time to get actual value of the
correct,
investments that
correct.
OpenAI
Yes,
And the second development, and this is something that the whole social media and everyone is talking about, and a lot of learners are getting confused about this as well, right? The AI that is coming up and this vibe coding culture that you are hearing, right? The cursor and the lovable, and there are so many things that are happening,
Mhm.
and I know this is not maybe going to help them a lot in the professional life, but the debate is happening that, like, before the websites happened 20 years back, like if you remember when I was in college, and you might also remember something called GeoCities, right?
GeoCities.
Yes.
Yes.
It
Yes.
came up and everyone used to do HTML programming and build their websites
Yes.
22 years back. And it was a lot of people started when the internet got boomed, GeoCities came. A lot of people made websites in my college, in my school. I remember those.
Mhm.
So the same thing right now is happening, that a lot of people are learning this, not this, maybe not that completely, but playing around and building their interactive websites, or and there's maybe simple applications.
Yes.
This, and for this, there is a wave that is happening, and some companies are benefiting from it. And what are your thoughts on this? Because I try to distinguish these two completely, because what you are doing at the vibe coding level will not help so much at the enterprise level, maybe in the near future. But there are two trends that I am seeing which are very moving in a completely different tangent, and people are trying to mix
So
it as
right.
well.
So
Yeah.
I'm kind of in the middle, right? I do feel like technology, there should be so much more um, resources poured into education, utilization, breaking down, understanding, why, and conveying why AI is a black box, right? How it actually works. So I am all for advancement and innovation. I do think from a organizational aspect, you kind of need to, you know, make calculated decisions. So I do understand that. Vibe coding, I look at that like it's fun. I mean, it's great. If you want to throw up a POC and just test an idea out, but I don't really think it has matured enough that, number one, that it's actual a viable solution for true development. Number one. Number two, I think where it gets highly, highly problematic is, so there's a psychological game that happens, and this with coding that you don't actually have to code,
Yeah.
right? It tricks people into thinking that they're proficient in this one thing that they're really not, right? And so, once again, if you go back to, I try to keep things very personal, very tangible for people to understand. To me, vibe coding is the difference between, you know, playing FIFA on PlayStation versus going out and playing soccer or football. Those are two completely different skill sets, right?
Yes.
If something goes bad and you lose in FIFA, well, then it's nobody cares. It's just a game, or you may care or whatever. But when it happens in the real world, there's real world impacts, right? And so you had all that stuff going on with people vibe coding and uploading their private keys, and you know exposing customer data because they didn't understand certain security parameters that were left out because they never coded an application that required you know protection from SQL injection or cross-site scripting. All of this stuff really matters. And so vibe coding is great to kind of get a feel for what's possible, but I can't really speak to the credibility or the usability aspect of it at a production scale, because once again, I think it's new. I do think it's an off ramp to true development. And so, with that, what it is, I'll give it credit. It's nice. It's clean. I've done it. I know you've done it, just monkeyed around with, Manus or Replit agents, or, pick one, Lovable, things like that. But I don't think it's providing people the service that it claims just yet.
Yeah. So now come ask about that question that we are using it because we for the Vibe coding is going to make the people who already know, like you, me, easier to do things faster, but we still understand the output that they are the throwing, right? We understand the
Correct.
structure. So if people don't understand that structure, like people who have never seen Python code understood, and then they are playing around with it, that is a red flag. Because at least for us, when it throws out, and I mostly use it for not developing the core part. The core part I try to manually try to write it myself, and then for the UI UX part, the boring part, which does not require
So yes, yes,
yes. Like
yes,
that is easy. Like because I don't want to write CSS, so many lines of
correct.
CSS, and so I just use that and do. But the main core logic that I'm using, I try to write it by myself, and that is what is you should do. You should not put everything out to vibe coding and not know what is happening. Right? It is going to be complete black box, which is
100%.
and we all say right
100%.
now that before we used to spend 80% of time in coding and 20% in debugging. And now it is opposite. Now we spend 20% in generating the code and getting things. Then the rest of the time we figure out in debugging, like what is the
And so,
problem.
right. And so that's the other part, right? So vibe coding is great, but if you create a POC and you're like, okay, I'm ready to take it to production, how much technical debt did you just create that you have no idea of
Yes.
the underpinnings, right? You have no idea if something's breaking, what that break is, because you don't understand the code that was generated.
Yes. So what, yeah, what message that we can give the people who are listening is uh, use it to play around, but at least understand how things work. And what I wanted to know one of your suggestions about the when people say that you don't need to learn coding. There is we always discuss about that.
Run. If anybody tells you that, run, leave, stop listening to them. Do not listen to them. So here's something I always try to give actionable information, when I talk to people. Right. So here's what I would tell anybody that's playing around with vibe coding. You want a great, my opinion, great use of vibe coding. Develop whether it's in like Firebase Studio or one of these other applications or solutions. Develop a very small, very limited application. Download the code and then break the code apart piece by piece. And here's to continue in this generative AI. So here are some good uses I feel like for it. When you break the code apart, just upload function by function into an LLM, whatever one you choose, and ask it to explain and comment in detail what's actually happening in this function,
Hmm.
and paste that code somewhere else. And then you can rebuild the code in your own, files, in your own structure, with a complete understanding of what is happening, UDF by UDF, user defined function by user defined
Yes.
function, or, whatever the different calls are. And so you can use what was generated because it generated it. You see it working. It does what it's supposed to do. Very limited, very small application. But then when you break the code apart and then you have, whatever solution that you want to help you understand what's actually happening. So that's what I would recommend people use vibe coding for.
Yeah.
Generate a quick POC, break down the code, and then get help analyzing what's actually happening and why.
Yes. One more thing, Michael, because you have been working a lot in also the model building part, the LLM part. How important is it for us to understand how does LLM works? And as you all know, LLM is a evolution of the neural networks, then the
Yep.
transformers, and how does this words get generated? Is it if in your thoughts, is it important for people to spend time and understand these things, or have an overview of the things just because what I feel, my personal advice is for people who are really serious of understanding how these things work, they should spend some time. It is not
Mhm.
easy. Nothing is easy in life, but you
Mhm.
need to at least understand because you will appreciate these things more. So, what are your thoughts on this?
So my thoughts are, what you said, to use your words, are you serious? right? Do you want to be a serious professional, or do you just want to, throw some code out there generated by AI and claim to be a professional and drag down, the entire industry because you don't know what you're doing, and you may get a job doing this thing and you can't do it because you weren't trained or you don't understand what's happening, right? And so I think there's a single path that you could take to determine whether you want to use an LLM for anything, and it's, does this need to be accurate? It's that simple. Can this be a probability, or do I need to have absolute accuracy? Right. And so that's the kind of decision tree that I use, that we use. And so if it's okay for it to be a probability, and what I mean by that is linguistic probability, right? So if I'm generating this post or this report or this, thing, then the majority of it can be a probability, some speculation, can be subjective based on the context that's provided. And then if there's any references, ensure that those references are accurate, ensure that they exist, things like that. But if it needs to be 100% accurate, or, if you're looking at like financial data, things like this, stay away from it. Just, use traditional methods. And so that's why I honestly believe that it is absolutely important that you understand the interworkings of, LLMs, top P, top gay, temperature, all of that stuff matters, right? That's literally why they're on the sidebar in, AI Studio and Google and Claude and all these. You can actually, adjust all that stuff in the playground. That's what it's there for. So you understand the impacts and implications that those thresholds have on the generated output.
Amazing. So one question came to my mind also, that there is a debate about fine tuning. Like, should we do fine tuning, or should we build our own large language model, or should we use RAG? So what are your thoughts about this? Because uh, building your LLM, as you know, very costly. You need to you don't need to reinvent the wheel again and again, because they already
Yep.
have a general purpose. Fine tuning is also costly as well, and depending upon the use case, I know the answer, but I wanted to know your thoughts, because there is a debate among these. I have kept the building your own LLM out as of now, because that is very expensive and for very specific use cases you want it. But if you want to give a compare between doing a fine tuning or doing a very good RAG architecture to solve some business problems, what are your thoughts on that?
So once again, to your point, it goes to the use case. It goes to the use case number one. And the use case will determine your budget, and then that will determine your decision, right? So if you start with the use case, what am I trying to do? Is this something brand new? Is this something that there's no commercially available solution that I feel comfortable with using, and I have a lot of resources? Then sure, go ahead, build your own LLM. If you cut that in half, you'll probably just want to fine tune, a DeepSeek or a Quinn, or, a Gemma model, something like that. The problem with fine tuning is good and bad. You don't have to start from scratch, but you still have the implicit bias of the weights that are currently there, right? So it may not get to be exactly what you want because it's based on pre-trained weights, that there's an implicit skew towards the data set that it was previously trained on, right? And then from a RAG standpoint, it's, once again, what are you trying to do with it? Is it a small RAG and you have structured, clean, single point of truth, single source of truth data? Sure, why not? If any of your data is murky, then you need to stop what you're doing, fix your data, and then revisit this whole question, right?
So now, this, as we all know, we understand of the working of an LLM, right? If even if we fine tune an LLM with all the good parameters and everything, Relying completely on an LLM, we will never be able to get accurate answers. When I say accurate, 99.99%, because as you know, there's hallucination happens. So only using a LLM, maybe you have created for your own use case or you have fine-tuned it, you cannot use it in silos. You need to put it in an architecture where you are connecting it to your own specific data or
Correct.
something. So even that's you have to. There is no, as you said, there is no correct answer depending upon the use case, but you always have to think about the not only solely relying on the LLM, how good it is, how accurate it is. You need to have some agents in concept, some framework, some control in place to make sure that you are getting that answer that you rely on, which can, especially for the enterprise level, not for the mentioned the gamers and all, the vibe coders, but for the enterprise level, you have to be very careful by going through different rules and frameworks. It can be guardrails, security, and everything. And this
Yes.
is a very important message that there is no correct answer. It
Right.
depends.
So I
Yeah.
think I would go back to, and this is why I've continued to say the one thing that will not be impacted, or that actually can be impacted in the employment space, how people can kind of prevent, certain things, is critical thinking skills, right? And so getting back to the front, I always try to get to the front of the problem, right? Properly defined problems. What actually are you trying to solve specifically? And so if you start with that, that helps you build a better use case, and it helps your developers, your engineers, your data scientists, your data analysts actually figure out what are the components necessary to analyze and solve that problem, right? When you say, "Oh, we just want to deploy agents to, increase our ordering or whatever," what does that mean, right? What are the specific requirements? And then it comes down to even more why you should actually understand the underlying architectures is what is the inference speed you need? Is a minute okay, or do you need it in milliseconds? Right? That's going to determine your architecture. Um, I'll give you another one that I haven't heard a lot about is your network infrastructure capable of handling these massive amounts of data? Because AI is not cheap on data. The actual inference may be, but the build up and the training, and if it's a RAG solution, what is the context? How big is the vector DB? All of that stuff has to get pushed through the network. So then you start going back, can your network handle all of this? So that's why I always try to go to the front and say, what specifically are you trying to solve? Once again, to try to make it personal so people understand it better. The brilliance of face recognition to face unlock on your phone. It has one simple task. One, is this person, and how sure am I? One task. Unlock if it's this person, or don't if it's not, right? So that is the core. That's the problem they're trying to solve. Like with Google Maps, right? If you look at the Maps application,
Yes.
what is that trying to solve? One problem. What is the most optimal destination? Now it's got embedded problems within that, context, but
Yes.
what is the optimal route to get to X destination? That's it. That's its sole job. And I think what makes those certain solutions successful is because going in, they pinpoint a specific problem, they frame the problem appropriately, acquire the data, and then use that data to get to that solution. Right.
Yes. And now, this one thing that while you were speaking, one question came to my mind is the type of jobs are really going to change eventually, right? A lot of automations are happening, a lot of jobs that you be used to be done by the normal, the not the white collars, the assistants, the
Yep.
sales agents, or the junior developers that used to
Mhm.
do all the documentation and all those things. We will see a very we will see a shift. It may take some time in enterprise level, but we are already seeing that the hiring has reduced for the junior roles that are there. And but when you were speaking, I could see there are some new types of jobs that are going to come in, like
Right.
more cyber security type of jobs, the testing type of
Definitely.
jobs. Yeah, before we used to have the testing where we used to do software testing, but now the testing is going to also change by checking the how the AI is responding to different types of prompts, or we call it the prompt testing that we do
Yep.
for identifying edge cases. So, what are your thoughts about because you are a futuristic, you see the type of jobs that are changing, especially for the people who are going to enter the job market or are looking to shift, because there is in the social media there is a scare. There is some that many people will be get losing their jobs. If you see, Microsoft has just laid 6,000 plus people, and a lot of companies are doing that. So, what is your thoughts? How is it going to shift, and what people should do to prepare for this shift?
So a couple things I would say: split your time. If I was going to start over, if I was going to start like today, I would split my time between two things. First would be the technology, the stack, how it works, the architecture, all of the nuances. I don't see the need to get deep into the statistics, the actual calculus, things like that. If you do, that's spectacular. You're much deeper and you're much more well versed, and that's great. That will serve you in the future. But I would, balance my studies literally half and half. I would use half from the technology perspective, but the other side that I feel like is going to be the great undoing, or the great optimizer, is critical thinking. I would literally start digging very deep and advancing my critical thinking skills. Right. I spoke to one portion of it, which would be, problem identification, because you can show me a top level AI engineer, right? Supreme prompt master, all of that, can build a model from scratch and all of that. But I promise you, when they apply that knowledge and build something that nobody cares about, right? That what's the point, right? You can build the greatest application on the planet. If nobody uses it, or the UI is so technical that nobody wants to use it, or something like that, right? So I think critical thinking skills are going to be the kind of college degrees of the future, right? And I don't know how that's going to be able to be fleshed out and framed or quantified, but I feel like there's something that, if you can specify why you need something, or why something is doing this, or why it's required, or why this was changed to X, or things like that, and you understand secondary and tertiary impacts, or cascade effects, or risks, or opportunities, I think you're going to be so much further ahead than somebody who's just purely technical, or just purely a vibe coder. So, my kids, technology, critical thinking, technology, critical thinking. That's how I would balance that, because you'll be much more effective, so much more effective, because you'll also, that helps you with regards to your technical skills, because now specifically how to better prompt for what you want. I don't mean taking a template. I mean actually crafting the specific prompt for the most high quality output to solve that problem. That's where critical thinking is going to come in. And whoever masters that along with the technical aspects, they will be in a much better position from an employment, an entrepreneurship, and a career perspective.
And just the second part was like what type of roles, like we discussed cybersecurity, AI in
Mhm.
cybersecurity. Any other
Mhm.
titles that is coming up to your mind that we might not that may come up in the coming few years?
I'll tell you a huge one, and it's needed right now. And very, very, very limited few people are even discussing this domain. I mean, you see it talked about, but I don't know what actions are taken outside of maybe government organizations. But so something that we were looking at launching probably later this fall is training for content disarm specialists, right?
Mm,
And so what that is basically when you have AI being able to generate all of this false narratives or whatever narratives, to be able to have people that can develop and deploy AI solutions
mm,
that can fact check and disarm and put out, corrections from an official perspective or an official channel or whatever to, misinformation or disinformation. To me, that is going to be
yeah.
so required in the future. Not even in the future, I would say today, because if you look at
Mm,
the large volumes of data and information that's coming out now, news that's coming out now, a lot of times we take it for granted because our brains are under tremendous cognitive load right now, just from the volume of information. So for me, I think a spectacular near term job of the future relatively is someone that can leverage AI to identify AI generated content, misinformation, disinformation, and have solutions to counteract that.
yes. When you were mentioning this, Twitter is already started doing this in a way where they are having some fact checks and they have a community of people who are doing it. But I don't know the success about this. Uh, and yeah,
I,
so
I'm not really a fan of community notes, um, because you still so we're still in that game of human bias, and we don't know which humans are,
yeah.
working. And if you look at, so I'll give you a prime example. Did you see the report that came out that Zurich University study where they use bots to change people's minds on Reddit?
But I'll not go into too much details. If you can just talk about it for a
So
minute.
basically, these researchers at the university, I think it was the University of Zurich,
Hmm.
train these bots to profile users on Reddit and then engage with them through comments to try to get them to change their mind. It's 60% of the cases they were successful, right? So, what happens when these are deployed into community notes?
Hmm.
Do we really know that it's actually being moderated, it's actually being debunked or whatever, right? So I'm super fan of, like, so I have kind of a basic, uh, not framework, but kind of basic, 1, 2, 3 steps that we like to deploy or that we use before deploying like anything agent based or any bots or any things like that. And it's, do you 100% log all of the interactions? Right? Everything that agent does or touches or bot does or touches, do you have a log file of that, right? For analysis and audit. What security measures do you have in place? Because to your point earlier about cybersecurity, now when you start releasing all of these things, you actually dramatically increase the organization's threat vectors, right? So
Yes.
not only just is it network, is it this application, is this agent, is this LLM, is this MCP, is this API, like all you just shove all of that out there as well. So what are the security levels that you're taking? And two, this is going back to what we are just talking about with like community notes and the bots and things like this. Do you have a human in the loop, right? A verifiable human being to say, is that true? Or that sounds preposterous. Or no, that actually happened. You right? So things like that. So those are kind of the three things that I stand by now, right? And what I can do is I'll send you. Google just released a basically a guide for agentic security. And so I'll actually send you that if you want to post it in the description, of this
Yes.
video. And I'll actually send you um, the research paper that the University of Zurich sent as well, so you can attach that. And basically, the title is like, "Can AI change your mind?" And they go through the whole breakdown of them deploying the bots on Reddit and changing the mind. So that. And so for me, getting back to the crux of jobs or employment in the future, I feel like number one would be we have to have someone or a collection of individuals that are specifically tasked with disarming mis and disinformation, whether it's accidental or intentional. And so accidental would be a hallucination, right? Somebody generates a report and it hallucinated. Do I honestly feel like in that situation they intentionally did that? Probably not, right? So that would be like misinformation. It's accident, whatever. Then there's disinformation, which would be like deliberate falsification or a false narrative or something aligned with this agenda or something like that. That would be one. I think going back to the human in the loop, right? So this is where your technical training and your critical thinking comes into play, right? So if you have a human in the loop, a prime example of this is the medical in the healthcare space, right? So obviously they identified this and they worked around it, but do you remember when they were using X-ray scans to identify lung cancer?
Yes.
And what they realized is every scan, when they deployed it into production, every scan was coming back positive, and nobody knew why. But one of the developers or one of the engineers realized that there was a measurement in all of the training data where there was a tumor. There was a measurement scale next to the tumor to delineate the size. Well, when they deployed it to production, the machines that they were using in production, the images weren't cropped. And so they had a scale along the side of the actual X-ray images. So everyone with the scale, the model was trained that if there's a scale, there's a tumor. So everyone was coming back, right? So this is that human in the loop job of the future, right? To be able to go in and identify when there's anomalous behavior. Why is that? To be able to, your technical side will tell you, what does the training data look like? Oh, okay. Well, there's a scale here. Okay. And in production, there's a scale on every one. That's why, right? So let's go ahead and fix the training data. You see what I'm saying? So
Yes.
critical thinking, human in the loop with the technical side. So to have basically human auditors to review the actual inferencing and performance of these models that get deployed in enterprise, specifically in healthcare, things that have real world impacts, I think will be a job of the future. Now, Microsoft and all of these companies, they're doing all this, layoff. Oh, we're going to show you how great automation is. Well, what I feel like is going to happen is there's going to be a rubber band effect, and you're laying off all these people, and then problems, technical debt. No one knows why these models are acting up. Okay, we need to hire a bunch of people that can come in and figure this stuff out, right? And so that's just kind of the nature of the employment. It's oh, we've got to figure it out, fired everybody. Oh, we really don't have this figured out. Let's hire people that can figure it out. Okay, well, they've got it figured out. So it's based on, current problems at the time. Do I think it's good? No, but that's just kind of the world we live in, right?
Yeah.
Because if you remember, oh my God, email's going to kill the postal service. Remember that?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to send any letters anymore because they're just going to email everything. And then, it just kind of, it balances itself out. I just feel like right now it's kind of hard to speculate on what the future is going to be, because if you look at it realistically, when did ChatGPT come out? 2003? Like November 2003? we're not even a full, or 2002, whichever it was, we're not even a full 3 years into this, 4 years into this. So there's a lot of figuring out that we still have to, we still need going on. And so, you know, but I'll still stand on critical thinking and
Mhm.
technical skills, specifically data skills.
Yes. Yes. So, Michael, if first of all, I really thank you for your time and sharing your knowledge to the community and your thoughts, because experience gives you the wisdom to share your what's happening and see. And as you and me both, we see the future as positive, because all these things change. We need to adapt
Absolutely.
ourselves, because that is how life is. Uh,
Absolutely.
the Any final thoughts for everyone who is listening to this podcast?
Yeah. So, and I speak a lot to the engineers, to the developers. Um, it's critically important for you to understand these technologies that you're deploying. And so, what I would suggest, once again, try to give people actionable information. If you come up with a solution, whatever it may be, a RAG solution, text analysis, imagery, video, whatever it may be, what I try to do with every solution that we develop is understand dual use. Every technology that has ever been developed always has dual use capabilities. So all of the good that can come out of it, there's all of the bad too. And so if you're developing this, you work for a company that's developing and deploying these solutions, there's one easy way, one really quick way for you to find out any adverse applications, and that's to put it in to an LLM, right? Here is my application, and explain that application in detail, and then provide me 10 adverse actions that can be taken and rank them in order of probability and impact. And that will give you all, I guess a range of 10 bad use cases for you to account for within your application, because you're responsible for that application, right? And so a prime example of that, and we kind of just touched on it, would be if social media companies did that in the beginning, if all of this stuff was there, and you have a Twitter or an X, and they said, okay, we have this and we think it's going to be great, people can comment and can, post and, all of this stuff. What are some potential adverse effects or adverse actions that could be taken? Misinformation, deep fakes, all of that stuff would have came out, right? And so now what you give yourself as a developer, as a company, is something to say, here, we've done our due diligence and we've accounted for XYZ. Will you be covered in everything? No, because you don't know what the fringes are, but it's one way for you to kind of give yourself, more balanced look at the technology that you're deploying. So definitely understand the dual use nature of this technology.
Yes, thanks a lot, Michael, for your time, and thanks everyone for listening to this podcast. And have a great day, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you again, brother. Always a pleasure.